I'm going to talk a little bit today from a little different perspective from somebody who's been at this for 6.5 years every day. And I look at it a little different than some of the people here. And the great part of this conference is that we get all different views. That's the reason we're having the conference and how we can go forward. It's a little bit like a political party. The objective is to win the day. We want to come up with the best way to do that. But as we speak now, oil was at $64 this morning. Goldman Sachs, Hannibal Lecter was out selling again. The same drill. You miners here, your energy costs are going up and up and up. And the situation just got worse again today. It's been this way ever since I can remember. And if I rant about some of the stuff, because I face it every day. We had a strategy to win the day from way back when, and it's a little different than some of the, I would say, the Neville Chamberlains here as part of appeasement for the gold cartel and what they're doing. It's a war we have, and we're not going to win the war by kissing their butts. It just doesn't happen that way. We developed a strategy after the Africa's greatest general Shaka for a reason, the developing Horn. And the front of the Horn was to go after these people with illegal means, which Reg Howe did so brilliantly. In the left flank of the Horn, we had the political pressure and go to the press, and the right flank was to go after the hedging. This is 6 years ago, and to cover that. And we'll change the strategy to win the day, which we're going to do. As Bob Landis said, we've already accomplished certain much. It's a fait accompli in certain ways, and that's what the film's going to be about. We're going to take this film and take it to the people that count and so on, and I'm going to cover that now. So, and again, this is like a brainstorming session. It's no good ideas or bad ideas. It's to get them out there, and we'll synthesize and put together and come up with a way to go forward. There's one particular point that I want to hammer home with this conference, and that is the price of gold should be many hundreds of dollars per ounce higher than it is today if it weren't for the shenanigans of this gold cartel. For simplistic reference, I point out that the historic norm of the gold-oil ratio is 15-to-1, which puts gold well over $900 at the moment where it should be. In the past, when the CRB was over 300, which is last time I looked was around 320, gold was went over $600. Even one of our cynics, economist Paul Van Eden, I use his work to bring forth the same point. He said, according to work I have done, I estimate that the gold price should have been about $51.22 an ounce in 1959, and if you assume that is more or less correct, you can calculate what the gold price should be today, compounding 51.22 at $770 per ounce. And then there was a stunning comment made a year ago, June, at the LBMA conference by Oleg V. Mozikov, the deputy chairman of the Central Bank of Russia. This is his quote in front of an audience of bullion dealers. So many have heard of the group of economists who came together in the society known as the Gold Antitrust Action Committee and started a number of lawsuits against the U.S. government, accusing it of organizing an anti-gold conspiracy. That's the first and last time I'm ever going to be called an economist. But they believe that with the assistance of a number of major financial institutions, they mentioned in particular the Bank for International Settlements, J.P. Morgan Chase, Citigroup, Deutsche Bank, and others, some senior officials have been manipulating the market since 1994. As a result, the price dropped below US 300 an ounce at a time when it should, if it had kept pace with inflation, reach US 740 to 760. That's the difference between today's price of $430 and that. That's what they're stealing from you and the people here. There are a number of clueless pundits out there who will come up with some lame excuses why the gold price isn't where it is. But what they come up with is a stretch, to put it kindly. It is right here where Gada hits its home run, because we gather total silence from those in the mainstream gold world who still refuse to acknowledge the manipulation of the gold price. The reason the price of gold is hundreds of dollars per ounce below where it should be is because the gold cartel has clandestinely lent out more than 16,000 tons of gold from the coffers of the central banks to keep the price from rising. This means the central banks has less than half the gold they say they have in their vaults. The total gold loan swaps, including the recent central bank gold sales, could now even be as high as 20,000 tons. Now, how can Gada make these claims, and how do we support what we have to say in these revelations? For me, it goes back to when I spent some time working with Frank Venerosa when he compiled the gold loan numbers. I was there. I saw how he did it, who he talked to, how he put them together. Back in 1998, Frank thought the gold loans could be as high as 10,000 tons. The annual supply-demand deficit now, and even back then, is 1,500 tons plus per year. Without going into all the detail, it is easy to surmise how gold could come up with a total gold loan number exceeding 16,000 tons. And, you know, you've seen such brain power here at this conference. I mean, this is the gold book that Frank did in 1998, and it's a basis for really why I got involved in God. I mean, this is heavy stuff, but it's real, and it's the way I see it. It's the truth of the gold market. Using two completely different methodologies a few years ago, Reg Howe and James Turk came up with guesstimates that supported Frank's findings. Reg used BIS derivative numbers, and James used Bank of England statistics, and both came up with generally the same idea. The BIS derivative numbers are a smoking gun. As long as God had been in existence, the World Gold Council and Goldfield Mineral Services have linked the huge derivatives on the books of the BIS to what the hedgers do, what the gold producers do. Yet when the hedgers reduced their positions by around 2,500 tons and the gold derivatives stayed the same or went up, they went totally silent, refusing to respond to God's charges that these huge derivative numbers were linked to a clandestine gold cartel lending operation. Now, how could this have happened without creating any kind of fuss? Simple. The IMF instructed the central banks to lie about the true disposition of their gold reserves, which I brought to your attention yesterday, and you can check that out in the handout that you have. The IMF has central banks accounting for their gold loans as gold reserves in their vaults. Ironically, these central banks now have a big problem. Because of the annual supply-demand deficit I brought to your attention, they can't get this gold back without sending the price to the moon. Why the extraordinary resistance to God's findings? Simple again. Not that long ago, most of the geography experts throughout the world thought the world was flat. When it was discovered the world was round, all their prior work was discredited. In similar fashion, the mainstream gold world, the bullion dealers, World Gold Council, GFMS, won't deal with God has to say because it invalidates their work and exposes their schemes. Since they can't discredit our discoveries, they refuse to acknowledge God at all. However, the beauty of all of this is that the days of the flat earthers are numbered. With the supply-demand deficit so high, mine supply on the wane, and available central bank gold supply dwindling, it is only a matter of time before the price of gold has to explode. At the same time, life's going by. The sooner the God of findings are accepted by the biggest money in the world, the sooner the price of gold goes bananas. What would a $300 per ounce higher gold price do for the gold companies here? For the performance of you gold fund managers that are here? Wouldn't life be a lot better off for all of us? And of course it would be. And this is why this conference is so vital, because enough is enough. It's time we get the word out there. It is time the investment world be made aware of God's findings. And the confounding part about the manipulation of the gold price is that it's so obvious for everyone to recognize. As was mentioned earlier, in the summer of 1998, Fed Chairman Greenspan testified twice before Congress saying central banks shall lease gold in increasing quantity should the price rise. Ever since then, that's exactly what they've been doing. God's voluminous evidence makes it blatantly clear that how this has transpired. Former Fed Chairman Paul Volcker stated the following recently in his memoirs regarding Fed activity during his regime as Fed Chairman. Quote, joint intervention in gold sales to prevent a steep rise in the price of gold, however, was not undertaken. That was a mistake. Greenspan was determined not to make the same mistake from his Orwellian point of view. Speaking of Greenspan, it's one of my favorite Gotcha stories, and has to do with an interplay between Senator Jim Bunning, the Hall of Fame baseball pitcher in his day, Greenspan, and Fed Senior Counsel Virgil Mattingly. Bunning, in response to one of the Gotcha Army in his home state of Kentucky, asked Greenspan, and we have this in writing, to clarify the meaning of the following in a 1995 Federal Open Market Committee meeting. It's another quote. It's pretty clear that these ESF operations are authorized. I don't think there's a legal problem in terms of the authority. The statute is very broadly worded in terms of the words like credit. It has covered things like the gold swaps, and it confers broad authority. Mattingly's response, again, all this is in writing, to Greenspan, which was passed on to Bunning and eventually back to us. Given the passage of time, some 6 years, I have no clear recollection of exactly what I said that day, but I can confirm that I have no knowledge of any gold swaps by either the Federal Reserve or the ESF. I believe that my remarks, which were intended as a general description of the authority possessed by the Secretary of the Treasury to utilize the ESF, were transcribed inaccurately or otherwise became garbled. That is hogwash. There's not a more scrutinized document anywhere in the world than these Fed minutes. I mean, garbled? I mean, phooey. It's ridiculous. Even the day-to-day gold cartel maneuvers are blatantly obvious. Many of you here in the Gada camp know about the $6 rule. And that's laughing because it happens every time. Gold goes up $6. The gold cartel gets the word out and they stop the market. The upper range is 730, and that's it. It doesn't matter how much people buy. At the end of the day, it's up 580, 640, 710. It's been this way for years. On the downside, no limit. And one of the reasons they've done that is because they want to control the volatility in the market to prevent any option blowups, which happened after the Washington Agreement and so on. And they want to keep excitement to a minimum, and it's all planned. There's a constant takedown after the London fix. When all the physical pricing is done, the gold cartel comes in. It happens all the time. They take it once it's done. After the cash pricing done, whether it's the beginning of COMEX or after the PM fix, right down. And then they're making money and they're ripping you off by the share action. Time and time again, out of nowhere, all of a sudden gold's up and the shares all of a sudden go down. Well, what's going on here? Next day, inevitably, gold goes in the tank. They're very consistent at fleecing investors. Now, when it comes to U.S. financial market policy, I'm sure most of you have heard of the U.S. strong dollar policy, set in motion by former Treasury Secretary Robert Rubin. Now, policy needs some kind of doing something besides verbiage. Can anyone here outside the Gada camp who's heard this, might tell the story, tell me what the United States did to effect the strong dollar policy? What did they actually do in the marketplace? I've been doing this for 3-4 years, talking like this. Never had one person raise their hand and tell me what the United States did. So I raised my hand like this. The rigging of the gold price is what the strong dollar policy is all about. That's why you have Treasury Secretary Snow talking about the strong dollar policy, even though if the dollar's in the tank, because they're still rigging the gold market. So the policy is still in action. From Gibson's paradox, we know a motive for the rigging of the gold price has been to keep interest rates lower than otherwise would have been. What other motives, and I've been asked this time and time again, would the United States, why would they do this? People that are naive about all this, well, why would they want to do all this stuff? It's another easy one, and pretty predictable when you think of the normal diatribe you get from the mainstream world. What happens every time gold makes a big move? What do you hear? Invariably you hear inflation concerns, crisis investing, safe haven, dollar tanking. All of these are negative for the U.S. financial markets. And gold hasn't even done anything yet, which is why they're still suppressing the case even as we speak, because they don't want this to head the headlines and affect the other markets. For me, one of the most disturbing aspects of this suppression scheme is the acquiescence on the part of the U.S. financial press to the gold cartel. The notion that we have a free press in the United States is a joke. We have a bought press, not a free one. Not only does the gold establishment refuse to deal with Gada's evidence of gold price manipulation, the U.S. financial market press will not even mention the name Gada, much less print what we have to say. Let me offer you some concrete examples why I know this is so. I met with the Bloomberg News people here numerous times over the years and contacted them, as many people in our camp have, for a long time. They have not mentioned the word Gada once in 6.5 years. Gada went to Washington and New York, as well as Dallas, to meet with Wall Street Journal reporters. All said that they would run with the story. Not one thing. A distinguished Washington attorney who I know went to Cornell like I did, spent years cultivating his friend Nell Henderson, the business editor of the Washington Post, giving her all the stuff that we had to say. result, nothing. They even went to the opera together. They're that close of friends, nothing. And this one really blows me away. A well-known editor at Barron's would only accept a letter to the editor from Chris Powell if he could rewrite it the way he thought was the right thing to say. A letter to the editor? Redone by Barron's? Kidding me. That's what we're up against. His press releases aren't given the time of day by the U.S. financial market press. Our so-called free U.S. financial press is petrified of taking on the biggest money and power in the world. Now, business is business, so be it, U.S. financial market press. But don't say we have a free press. We have a controlled press. We have a bought press. I've asked myself this question many times, and we have a distinguished gentleman here from Moscow. I wondered how much is our press really different than the controlled days of the Soviet regimes. It's pitiful that Gada has received more press from Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, Der Spiegel, and this Russian business magazine than we have from the United States press in all these years. By the way, Canadians aren't going to get off scot-free here either. The Globe and Mail and National Post, I talked to all of them. They wouldn't return my phone calls. And I would like to thank the CBC for coming and doing a marvelous job and giving us the coverage they have, and I'd like to thank them very much. Now, one of the purposes of this conference is to discuss ways Gada's findings can reach the world financial press. For once the big money in the world knows what we know, where the price of gold is headed and why, the gold cartel has had it. The impact on central bank sellers, those not obliged to the cartel, could be profound. With the knowledge gold is going much higher, the new rage regarding central bank activity might be what I expect to be, and it's been mentioned here, is who's buying, not selling. I'll give you a good example. On last Thursday, Alexei Kudrin, the Russian finance minister, said that their gold and foreign exchange return of Russia, because of oil soaring so much, are going to double. So I don't know, 200 billion plus whatever. If that percentage, if the Russians, for example, know what we know, and they're going to be doing this, what has happened in the market, and really get into it, and we know that they have some interest because of what Mr. Mozikov said, if they put some of that money into gold instead of euros for foreign exchange, it can blow the market wide open. It's the same with the Arab countries. They've got all this oil money, and where's it going to go? We know that just from the Russians have said. So my whole concept is it's very simple. This is what's happened in the gold market. The central banks don't have it anymore. The gold price is going to go here. Here's the voluminous amount of evidence. We're going to get this story to the biggest money in the world. The Russians, the Arabs, the Chinese, the biggest hedge fund money. We're going to do it through this video. And we have a campaign that we're going to start as soon as this conference ends, and so on. And that's how the way I think we can win the day. The Gada camp has discovered a gold cancer. The longer this cancer goes untreated, the greater impact it will have on financial markets around the world. As it stands now, I believe the manipulation of the gold price is the linchpin mechanism reason for the market bubbles prevailing in the United States. The longer the price manipulation goes on, the greater the bubble burst will be. Better the U.S. financial markets take chemotherapy-like treatment now regarding the gold truth than stay in denial only to face certain death down the road. When I was a kid, we all rooted for the early George Washington-type Americans who took on the tyranny of the British and fought to make us a free country. There would not have been one youth in our entire nation who rooted for the British when watching movies of the day about our fight for independence in 1776. Who could be against those fighting to right a terrible wrong? What few Americans appreciate is that our country evolved because of a very few dissenters who vociferously protested what the British were doing. Those few eventually galvanized the entire country, most of whom who previously were content to go along with the status quo, the accepted mainstream British line of thinking. This is how America was founded and gained its freedom. It is Gada's hope that this conference will be a galvanizing catalyst to right another terrible wrong, that the energy emanating from Dawson City will successfully expose what the gold cartel has done and why. For when this happens, gold will become a free and fair market again, and the world will be much better off for it. Thank you.